Hey, ladies and gentlemen, here we are on another Wednesday evening. I'm Tommy.
I'm Joe.
And this is ToJo Live.
Welcome to ToJo Live.
Hey, guys, here we are for another episode of ToJo Live, where we are here to discuss your questions about life, faith, and the church. And listen, guys, we would love to answer those questions from you. That's what brings value to this show. We would love to have you ask those questions right here on screen with us. We love it when people join us on screen. Tammy will eventually put up the link that you can copy and paste and come on screen with us. But if you're more comfortable just putting it in the chat box, you could do that, and we'll address your question as it comes up. And as always, if you have any prayer requests or praises, then you can put those in the chat box, and we will also pray for those as well. Hey, guys, as we normally do, we'd like to open up with a scripture verse. And this one comes from Romans chapter 12. As you know, we're going straight through Romans chapter 12. This is verse 12. And it says, "Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer." That's a 3-point sermon right there. We could do a whole sermon just on that verse. Be joyful in hope. You know, we have a hope that is beyond any other hope. We've got a hope of heaven. We've got a hope that God is with us and is working in us and through us. We have a hope that he will never leave us nor forsake us. We know because of Romans 15:13 that God is the God of hope, who will fill us with all joy and peace as we trust in him, so that we overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. And that gives us joy. If we have that hope, that should give us joy. And as we've talked about before, joy is more than just happiness. Nothing wrong with happiness. Happiness is good too. But joy is deeper than that. Happiness, I've heard it described as happiness is what happens around you. Okay, and certain things happen, it makes you happy. But joy is something that takes place inside of you. And it's not necessarily dependent upon the things that are happening around you. It's not dependent on our circumstances or situations. It's a joy that we have in the midst of that. I've also heard the word joy used as an acronym for the way that we experience joy is we put Jesus first, that's the J, others second, that's the O, and yourself last, that's the Y. So Jesus, others, and yourself. Which is probably a pretty good way of looking at it, because we even know from studies that those people that are seeking joy or happiness seldom find it. It's when we seek to help others that we begin to experience that joy.
Amen.
For ourselves. Yeah, absolutely. And then the second one is patient in affliction. Listen, not all of life is roses, right? Sometimes there's parts of life that just flat stinks. We have afflictions, we have sickness, we have things that we go through. We have things like a global pandemic that shuts down the world for a period of time. We have those things in our life. And what Paul is saying here is be patient. This too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
Be patient in affliction. And then the last one is faithful in prayer. Through it all, be faithful, turning to God, trusting in him, and praying to him. Now, Tammy has been very patient because she's been holding up her hand for like 3 minutes now. All right, now she's waving at me.
All right, because we had some interactive issues between DLive and Facebook over the last few weeks, Facebook is not sending out, because we were not on Facebook last week. Facebook's not sending out the comments, the notifications. So if you are on and you are listening to us, please share this on your own page. That helps us get out there. In the meantime, we have already gone live. We want to welcome Brookville, Locust Valley, Glen Cove, Seacliff, Glen Head, and Glenwood Landing. And we want to welcome Glen Cove neighbors. And thank you, Christine, for sharing. Man, she listens fast. And I just want to point out, as soon as we start the show, I run to my mom's bedroom, which is on the same floor. And I run down there and I turn it on because she is an avid ToJo listener. She's faithful every week. But I got to tell you, when I went in there and turned it on and brought it up on her TV and came running back down the hall, this is what I heard her yell behind me. "Ooh, Joe's back!" I think she's missing you, Joe.
There you go.
Well, I've missed everyone as well, Yeah.
Joe, it is great having you back, man. I'm glad that you're feeling better.
Yeah, it was a rough couple of weeks, as you know. So I just want to thank everyone for their prayers and their kind words of support. And I will just say this: by God's grace, I am much better. It could have been pretty bad, but it's not. And I'm staying as healthy as I can, and really looking forward to being back in the building on Sunday after being gone for a couple of weeks.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah.
My sisters are going to be here this weekend.
Oh, that's wonderful.
My sisters, so you'll get to meet them.
When are they coming up? Or
they're coming up on Friday, and they're going back on Monday.
Okay, great.
So
that'll be super.
Hello, Christine. Christine is on here, and as Tammy said, she's already shared it. So thank you for doing that. Something weird's going on with Facebook, and some. I don't know, Tammy had trouble getting it started tonight. We did get it started. It's going. Unlike week before last, we never did get it on Facebook, did we?
No, and it was something with BeLive. BeLive was, or I'm sorry, it was something with broadcasting. Had nothing to do with BeLive. Facebook was refusing to broadcast something from an outside broadcaster, and so that's where we've hit some snags. But for the most part, we should be back on. We should be back up. Everything should look good at this moment. So we got several people on, but it is not showing me who's on. So I don't know who's here. There's Christine. I know.
Yep. We got Christine, and we've got all of the suburbs of Glen Cove.
I know. Mark Hendricks is supposed to be back on tonight.
Is he?
Yeah, and so was Leo Dan.
Oh, awesome! He's
supposed to be coming back on, but I don't know if he's back on here yet or not. If he is, he's silent.
No. Here's my quote for the day. Joe, were you getting ready to say something?
No, I was. It looks like we're both on YouTube and Facebook. I'm looking at the top of my screen
now.
Here.
Yeah, we should be on both of them right now.
Okay. But only Christine is showing up in my, comment section.
Yeah, but I've got 5 watchers showing up
Excellent.
on one screen, so I don't know why it's. I don't know.
Hey guys, this is the quote, and it's not necessarily just like usually when we do quotes, it's like a 1-sentence quote type of thing. This is something that I found on Facebook, and I did a little research on it, and it's accurate. There is an author / historian by the name of Tom Holland. Now, don't confuse this with the actor Tom Holland. Okay, it's not the guy that at times I think my daughter has had a crush on. It's not that Tom Holland. This Tom Holland is much older than the actor, and he's actually an English historian and an atheist. Although right now I'm not sure where he is with that. But I know that traditionally he has been an atheist. But and we're going to show a video of his later in the broadcast. But I want to read this. It says, while studying the ancient world, Tom Holland writes that he realized something. Simply, the ancients were cruel, their values utterly foreign to him. The Spartans routinely murdered imperfect children. The bodies of slaves were treated like outlets for the physical pleasure of those with power. Infanticide was common as the killing of babies. The poor and the weak had no rights. How did we get from there to here? It was Christianity. This guy's an atheist. It was Christianity, Holland writes. Christianity revolutionized sex and marriage, demanding that men control themselves and prohibiting all forms of rape. Christianity confined sexuality within monogamy. It is ironic, Holland notes, that these are now the very standards for which Christianity is derided. Christianity elevated women. In short, Christianity utterly transformed the world.
Mm.
Now, this is coming from a guy who claimed for many years to be an atheist. His background, the way he was raised, his dad was an atheist. His mother was an Anglican, so she was a believer. She was a follower of Jesus, and so I guess he had both sides growing up. And as he became an adult, he kind of went to the atheist side. And from what I understand, and I'm not an expert on this guy, I just recently found out about him, but from what I understand, pretty much lived his life as an atheist. It's only been in the past few years, and when I say the past few years, maybe 7 to 8 years, that he has been revamping his view and kind of looking at things differently as he has studied the historical impact of Christianity on the modern world. He realizes that it's Christianity that has pulled us out of this world that did not value life, that didn't try to help those that were weak, but instead put down those who were weak, and oftentimes the powerful would literally kill those that were weak. And it was Christianity that helped people to understand the value of people that they would consider weaker people. And that includes females. In the ancient world, females, by most men, were considered less valuable than men and were treated as such. And it was Christianity that began to transform that mindset, that gave women more value, that gave children more value, that gave those that may not have as much money as everybody else more value. That Christianity is what began to show that there's more value in people than just your financial standing and your physical power. And I just love that, the fact that somebody's coming from an atheistic point of view, but yet they're honest enough when they investigate it to admit, hey, this Christianity thing has had a much stronger impact on the world than what I originally thought.
Yeah. Brother, it would be so awesome if so many people knew what you just said and understood that quote. You know, you had mentioned on, I guess, one of your sermons probably a few months back, or I think I may have as well, that, you know, Christianity did all that and much more too. The healthcare system, the hospitals, Christianity started all the major hospitals to care for sick people around the world.
Yeah.
And pretty much every major Ivy League college, the genesis of it goes back to Christianity. Yes. You look at Harvard or Yale or Columbia or Dartmouth or Penn or whatever, they were all founded by Christians.
Right.
And I think people, and it's so ironic when you talk about universities, there's the very institutions that were founded by Christians have totally turned their back on that in so many ways on what they teach.
Yeah.
and what they tolerate. So
yeah, absolutely. I tell you, there is a good book that I read several years back in the 90s by Dr. James Kennedy. I think he has since passed away. But the title of the book is What If Jesus Had Never Been Born? And what he looks at is each chapter looks at an area of what we oftentimes take for granted today. Like you said, our healthcare system. You know, we take for granted today that's kind of always been there. Our higher education system, we kind of take for granted today that's always been there. And each chapter looks at that type of thing and shows how historically it would not exist, or would at least look much different today had it not been for the impact of Christians in those areas. And so I would encourage anybody to read that book, What If Jesus Had Never Been Born? Because our world would look much different today had Jesus never been born. So, all right. Good stuff, though. And like I said, here in a little bit, we're gonna show a video of Tom Holland talking with N.T. Wright. N.T. Wright is a Christian. I think he's still living. I had to read some books of his when I was in college and stuff. A very intelligent guy. I think he wrote a book. I think he's the one that co-wrote with Frank Turek the book. Hold on, what is it? I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist is the name of that book. And I think N.T. Wright is the one that co-wrote that with him. And so N.T. Wright is just a very intelligent guy. But it's interesting with this conversation, and we'll play that a little later. So how are you?
So Sonia came on board, and hey, Sonia, how you doing? And Mark Hendricks is on as well.
We've missed you, Mark. He took a social media break for about a month.
Yeah, he did. He went on a social media break. Listen, which is not a bad idea for us to do from time to time. Our church is doing a 40-day fast right now. We're in the middle of that. And one of the things that we've talked about is the fact that, a fast doesn't always necessarily mean food. It can mean food, obviously, and that's what we typically think of. But it can be other things. And one of the things it could be is social media. Listen, we could all benefit from a period of time where we fast from social media. It's very time consuming. It can give us a whole lot of negative thoughts. It takes us in directions we wouldn't normally go when we get on social media. So that's Mark, that's an inspiration, man. And hello to Sonia as well. We see her. Sonia was I got on here last week because we weren't able to do ToJo last week, and typically we were on vacation. And typically when we don't do ToJo, I'll get on at 6:00 and just let people know, that we're not doing ToJo. And I was at Virginia Beach when I did this, and we went down on the beach and talked a little bit about the message from the previous Sunday. Obviously not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, where we talked about brave the waves. And we went back through the acronym of the word brave. And then I turned around and I said, here's an example. And I ran out into the ocean and just dove into the water. And it wasn't overly rough, but it was a little rough. And Sunday, Sonia came up to me. She goes, I saw you jump in that water and it was rough. Are you crazy? Oh, man.
This from the man who wanted to stay when he found out that we were under a hurricane watch.
Oh, yeah. They had a tropical storm, which did become, I think, a Category 1 hurricane at one point. Yeah. And the day we left, man, the waves were rougher than they had been the whole time we were there. And I was like, oh, I so wish we could stay another day because I like the rough waves. Maybe I am crazy.
Yeah, I think maybe you are.
That's a definite maybe.
A definite maybe. Verdict's still out on that one.
I was allowing Facebook to distract me from important things I needed to pay attention to.
Yeah, and that is very easy to fall into, where Facebook and other social media and even the computer as a whole, or cell phone as a whole, can oftentimes distract us from important things that we need to pay more attention to. We've got times in our family that we set aside the phone. Like sometimes when we sit down to eat, it'll be a phone-free dinner, which means, we put our phones away, and if we get notifications, hopefully we turn them off. But if we forget to turn them off, if we get notifications, we just ignore them until we're done with our meal. And it's good to have those periods of time, even if it's just for a few minutes. But a few days can be good too. So, excellent stuff. Are we ready for trivia?
I don't have the question, but I do have the scores. count?
Yeah, let's have the scores.
Okay. Oh, that's a short question. I can type that. Okay, scores. Right now, Karen is on the board with 1. Joan and Marianne are tied at 2. William and Mark are tied at 3.
Ooh.
And Christine's in there with 3. So there's a 3-way tie with 3. And Krista Lawson is in the lead with 4.
Ooh,
She's
Krista's
the
in the
one
lead.
to beat.
All right. Here is the question. What was King David's dad's name? What was King David's dad's name?
Really?
There you go. Hopefully I won't get turned off for doing that.
I know, right? Oh!
Christine got it. His name is Jesse. Now, it's not to be confused with Uncle Jesse off the Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Oh. So Christine and Krista are tied.
Christine and Krista. Mark got the right answer. He was just a little bit behind Christine.
Yep, just a little bit too slow.
All right. Good job, guys. Hey guys, we are in the middle of this series, When Anxiety Attacks, that we're doing on Sunday morning. And listen, if you've missed any of those or if you missed all of them, I would encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and watch those. I think they have been I've gotten more feedback from this series than possibly any series that we've done since I've been here. And the reason being, a couple of reasons. First of all, anxiety is something we all deal with at some level, at some point. And especially since COVID, anxiety has risen since in this post-COVID world that we are in. Listen, if you're looking for a new career to go into, counseling is the one to go to. Because they are overwhelmed. I mean, there's a number of counselors now. Oftentimes I get people that come to me and I refer them out to counselors. And right now I'm having trouble finding counselors that are taking clients because they are full. Their schedule is full and they're not able to take anybody else on. And it's because of this post-COVID world that we are in. And it has created a higher level of anxiety and a longer lasting anxiety, along with other issues as well. And so the fact that we've talked about this for the past few weeks, I think has been extremely beneficial for people with the anxiety that they are dealing with. And in this past week, we talked about the fact that it will happen. If God says it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Now, we may get anxious about it, or we may begin to doubt God, or we may question his timing. And one of the things that we looked at in the story this past week is that all the people on that ship, this was from Acts 27, all the people on the ship that Paul was on, God told them, you're going to get safely to the other side. You're going to get there. Your ship won't make it, but you're going to get there. And Paul said in verse 25 of Acts 27, so keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen just as he told me. And it all comes down to our faith in God. It will happen just as he told me. That's where our courage comes from, is when we have faith in God. If we try to put it in our own power, we're going to lose courage because there's going to be things in life that proves we're not strong enough. We don't have enough. We don't have enough ability. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough energy and strength to be able to do it all the time. We've got to rely on God. But again, it may not happen the way we planned. I'm sure that everybody got on that boat, including the prisoners, of which Paul was one, figured if they were going to make it to the other side, that it was going to be on a boat that was fully intact. I'm surely that was what they thought. I mean, when I get on a boat, that's what I'm thinking. If I get back on the land, it's going to be because this boat is still intact and I get on land. We went on a cruise a few years, about 9 years ago now, wasn't it? And when we took off from the harbor, I just trusted that we were going to eventually come back to that harbor in a fully intact boat. And you know what? We did. But that's not what happened here. But they did all arrive safely. So it didn't happen the way they anticipated. It didn't happen the way they planned, but it happened. And listen, God does that in our lives all the time. It doesn't always happen the way we plan or the way we anticipate. But if God said it will happen, it will happen. Mark Hendricks is saying, I heard a preacher say that anxiety is a weight that we don't need. It's exactly right, Mark. We talked about this a few weeks ago in this series, that we're not made to carry this weight. We don't have what it takes to carry the weight. God does. God can carry it, and he can deal with it in a healthy way. When we try to carry the weight all by ourselves, man, it does something to us, and we begin to think in ways that are not healthy ways to think. And so God wants us to lay those things on him. He has the shoulders for it. He wants us to share it with other people. I think the old saying goes, I don't know who said this originally, that a burden unshared doubles, but a burden shared is cut in half. And that is so true. When we share something we're dealing with somebody else, it cuts the weight in half. And one of the ways God wants us to deal with things, one of the ways we can put it on his shoulders is also sharing it with other people. I believe that's one of the big reasons Jesus created the church, because we can't do it all on our own. We need each other in all of this. So, got anything to add to that, Joe?
Brother, no, I think you've said it all. I really mean that.
It's amazing to me how this series is really hitting people.
I love it. And brother, so many people have come to me and said the timing on this is just perfect.
Yeah.
And it's funny as we're preparing the sermons for these, so many times I find myself looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, you know what? I need to say this, but I need to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, sometimes I tell people that I just preach these messages, but because I need them, and I hope you benefit from them as well.
Amen.
Yeah, I need these messages. This is not just for the benefit of those I'm talking to. This is for the benefit of my own mind and my own heart.
You're just preaching
as well.
Straight to me. Go ahead and tell people.
Tammy says I'm preaching straight to her.
This whole series is about me, y'all. It's the whole thing. I know it, and he knows it, and probably everybody else knows it.
But Tammy, you never get anxious. You don't
have.
anything.
I don't have. I'm gonna get.
You're so easygoing and. It's incredible though, what a lot of people don't realize, or maybe they do, but anxiety is contagious, and when you're anxious or really anxious, you could and you do make other people anxious. I see it at home. I see it at work.
Yep.
I see it everywhere. And by the way, you almost at times I can't watch the news because it's like they say, good evening, this is the news. And then they go on and tell you how it's not a good evening because there is no good news that you hear about. Whether it's the paper or on TV or whatever, it's always something bad or depressing or, whatever. And I find myself trying to distance myself. I can't watch the news anymore because I don't know. It's nothing good to hear.
Yeah. I tell you, one of the things, I have not completely broken myself from the news. I've attempted it a few times and I haven't been able to take it that far.
Maybe that's what you need to fast from.
Fast from the news.
Yes.
Maybe. But I have greatly limited my time. I will watch the news in the morning, which is probably not the best time to watch the news. But it's when I watch the news while I eat my breakfast. And when I'm done eating my breakfast, I turn it off. And for the most part, I mean, you get stuff online, online things popping up, and you get that stuff. But as far as sitting down in front of the TV and watching the news, that's most of the time, 90% of the time, it's just when I eat breakfast in the mornings.
Yeah. So. Well, it's good to stay on top of the major things that are going on that you could pray about and at least understand. But so much of the evening news has become commentary, that regardless of what channel you're watching, it's someone's opinion.
Yep.
Whether you agree with it or not.
Right.
Yeah, it could create anxiety. But I'm with you. You can't totally stay away from it. I
like to be informed. Although there are some people that completely just remove themselves from the news. I guess they get information from people that are talking and stuff. But I'm a bit of an information junkie. And so, like, if something's happening or something, I'm like, I'll go turn on the news to see what's happened. If the weather looks odd or it looks like a big storm's coming up, I'll jump on the TV to see what's coming on and stuff like that, and with eagerness actually to find out what's going on. I was getting ready to read Mark's comment there. Proverbs 12:25. Mark has put this up. Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. There you go. We need a lot less anxiety and a lot more kind words. Oh, I love it. Hey guys, I quoted at the beginning of the show Tom Holland, who is, or maybe was, I think he's maybe kind of in an in-between stage right now, as far as the information I could get. But he was an atheist, and through his study, he's a historian from England, and through his studies had come to the conclusion that Christianity has had an enormous positive impact on our modern world. And I actually looked up some videos of him, and one of them is a conversation. It's not the whole video, and the whole video is like an hour long. We got about, 4 or 5 minutes of it. So it'll cut off abruptly, but that's because it's not the whole video. But it's a conversation he was having with N.T. Wright and another guy. I'm not sure who the other guy is there. But it's just interesting, especially when you realize this guy is coming from an atheist background, a guy that believed and maybe still believes, because from what I understand, he still has trouble believing in the divine aspect of God or the miraculous aspect of God. But he definitely cannot deny the positive impact of Christianity on our modern day world. And so I want to play this video and just let you see this. It's pretty phenomenal, I think.
Cicero's great contemporary Caesar is, by some accounts, slaughtering 1 million Gauls and enslaving another 1 million in the cause of boosting his political career. And far from feeling in any way embarrassed about this, he's kind of promoting it. And so when he holds his triumph, people are going through the streets of Rome carrying billboards, boasting about how many people he's killed. And this is a really terrifyingly alien world. And the more you look at it, the more you realize that it is built on systematic exploitation. Mm-hmm. So the entire economy is founded on slave labor. Right. The sexual economy is founded on the absolute right of free Roman males to have sex with anyone that they want, any way that they like. And in almost every way, this is a world that is unspeakably cruel to our way of thinking. And so this worried me more and more. And it was kind of like, I was thinking, well, I'm clearly not, as I'd vaguely imagined, the heir of the Greeks and the Romans in any way, really. And so where am I coming from? And it was like a kind of itch, you get on your back and you think you can't find it. And this was then enhanced for me by then writing a book about late antiquity and the emergence of Islam from the late religious the religious and imperial context of late antiquity, and again finding in Islam a profound quality of the alien. That there were aspects of Islam that were very familiar, but there were many aspects of it that again seemed deeply, deeply alien. And I began to realize that actually, in almost every way, I am Christian. And I began to realize that actually Paul, although in many ways he seems a much less familiar figure than Cicero, the kind of urbane man with his property problems, Paul never had any property; he just made tents.
Yes.
That in almost every what is it, seven, that is the 7 letters that are
People
conventionally people
ascribe to
absolutely
him.
accept that and as Tom Wright was saying, this is not a very lengthy amount of writing, but compacted into this very, very small amount of writing was almost everything that explains the modern world.
Well, the Western world, as we take for granted. Yes,
but also the way that the West has then moved on to shape, concepts like international law, for instance. So the fact, concepts of human rights, all these kind of things, ultimately, they don't go back to Greek philosophers. They don't go back to Roman imperialism. They go back to Paul.
Some
and
of
Paul,
the humanists
Paul really
and atheists,
his letters, I think, are, along with the 4 Gospels, the most influential, the most impactful, the most revolutionary writings that have emerged from the ancient world.
When you penned that article, I think it was for the New Statesman, where you said what I got wrong, and you sort of came out, as it were, and said, as far as my values and background are concerned, I am a Christian.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see the response to that, because I saw lots of atheists and humanists saying, "Oh, hang on, democracy, that goes back to the Greeks. Don't pretend that Christianity gave us everything we're grateful for." But you honestly think that actually people simply haven't appreciated just how much we owe to the Judeo-Christian?
I think. If we're talking of Paul, I think of him as a kind of depth charge, deep beneath the foundations of the classical world, and it's not anything that you particularly notice if you're, in Corinth or Alexandria. And then you start feeling this kind of rippling outwards. And, by the time you get to the 11th century in Latin Christendom, everything has changed. And you have this, I think essentially what Paul's significance is that he sets up ripple effects of revolution throughout Western history. So the 11th century, with the Papal Revolution, essentially it establishes this idea that society has to be reborn, reconfigured, that vested interests have to be torn down. And then the Reformation, what we call the Reformation, is a further ripple effect of that, and the Enlightenment is a further ripple effect of that. And very interesting. It spilled out so much that now in the 21st century we don't even realize where these ripple effects are coming from. We just take them for granted.
And like I said, guys, that video goes on. I think it's like an hour-long conversation in there. It continues to talk about that stuff. But it's just, I just thought it was amazing that somebody who had come from an atheist background that admitted, hey, I've been wrong about this. I thought that our modern society was more influenced by the Greek and Roman culture, secular culture, than anything else. But what he's come to realize is that it's more impacted by Christianity than anything else. And you notice the wording there that they said, the one guy that was talking, not N.T. Wright, but the younger guy, he said, as far as your values and morals go, you're Christian. And from what I've studied about this guy, that's kind of where he is. I don't know that he's accepted, like, that Jesus is the Son of God and that he rose from the dead and that type of stuff. I don't know that he's accepted Christianity to that extent. But he has moved a great deal from extreme atheism to a person who is willing to admit that our society would be much different without the influence of Christianity on that. So You got any comments on that, Joe?
No, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I know it kind of ended abruptly, but I thought it was pretty powerful. Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, you know what we haven't gotten in a long time? Questions from our audience.
Yeah.
We need questions from you guys. And so if they're right now, or if they're ones that we can't address now that we have to address later because we're running out of time, that's good. But that's where our best material comes from, is when we have questions from you guys. And give us the hard stuff. We're all right with that.
Tell me, who was the gentleman that was on? He hasn't been on in about several weeks, but he used to have some really good questions, deep questions.
Was that Leo?
That was Leo.
Yeah.
Leo Dan. He's supposed to be back on tonight, but I sent him a reminder and I haven't heard from him, so I don't think he's watching live.
Yeah.
But he may watch on replay.
He did have some good questions when he was on here.
He would ask those questions, and I'd say, "Well, yeah, let Tommy answer that one."
I tell you what I love about, talking about what we've talked about so far about the influence of Christianity on the world, is the fact that I believe as followers of Jesus, we have a call to turn the world upside down, to change the world. And one of the things, Joe, I know this sticks out in your mind because you bring it up from time to time. When I first interviewed with Joe and the other leaders of the church, it was a phone interview. I was still in Kentucky, and they were kind of checking me out. I was checking them out to see if this was going to be a good fit and everything. And one of the things that I told the leadership then, that I am not looking for a job. I'm looking for a headquarters to change the world. And because I believe as Christians, that's our call. We have a call to make a positive difference in this world. And the reason this world is, and it's not perfect, listen, we've got a lot of problems, a lot of faults, but it's a whole lot better than it was when people who were poor were just being killed and women were being traded like property and children were being disposed of. I mean, listen, we still have a long way to go. Let's be honest about that. But we have come a long way, and a lot of it has been because of the influence of Christians and what they have done to make this world a better place. They have turned the world upside down. Let's continue to carry that torch to turn the world upside down. What are those things that God has put on your heart? Listen, we can't all do everything, but we can all do something that comes from what God has put in our heart. Listen, what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did with the civil rights movement, that was just amazing. But it was something that God had put on his heart, and he led that charge, and other people joined in. And again, we've still got a ways to go, but civil rights are so much better today than they were back in the 40s and the 50s and even the 60s. So much better. And whatever it is, what was her name? Clara Barton, right? She was the one she was a nurse. Wasn't Clara Barton a nurse? And, just the influence that she had. She was a believer. She was a follower of Jesus. And God had put this on her heart to minister to people who were sick. And all of that influence continues to be a part of what we are today. As Joe mentioned earlier in the show, many of our Ivy League schools were started by Christians, by ministers, with the primary purpose of preparing people for ministry. And that's hard to believe, but that was the primary purpose for starting many of the Ivy League schools. And the whole concept of higher education in our country came from Christians. They changed the world. Because now we just take it for granted that we have higher education. When you graduate high school, you have an opportunity to go to college. And then after that, you have an opportunity for a master. If you had an opportunity for a doctorate, however far you want to go, it is available to you. Why? Because a few hundred years ago, God had put it on the hearts of people to prepare people for ministry. And now look at what it's grown into. And listen, as Joe mentioned earlier, some of what it's grown into is not necessarily positive. But there still are a lot of positives. Even if they're not just preparing people for ministry, they are preparing people, I believe, for things that are going to make the world a better place. In most cases.
We want to say hi to a few people. Pastor Joe D'Ambrosio. You spoke with him at Blue Point a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. Hey, man.
There. Bart Aftab is
I thought
on.
his name was Jay.
Jay. Oh, no.
Is
I
it
don't
Joe?
know. It might be Jay. Hold on. I'll have to
I think
look
it was
back up.
Jay. Jay or Jason. I think Jay was short for Jason. But glad to have you on here, man.
And Michael Clark.
And Michael Clark.
Jay, you're right. Pastor Jay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pastor.
Yeah. He was another one of the speakers at a church out in Blue Point, Blue Point Bible Church out there where Michael Miano preaches. Michael Miano heads up the Facebook page, Long Island Christians. Listen, if you're not a part of that page, I encourage you to become a part of that page. It's great information on there. And also it lets you know of many of the events, Christian events that are taking place on the island as well. So glad to have Jay on here. And then Michael, glad to have him on here as well. I love this verse. And you guys have probably heard me quote this before. It's from Acts 17:6. It's talking about Paul and many of the other apostles and what they were doing in the book of Acts. You talk about a group of people that were changing the world. Read the book of Acts. I mean, the world was being changed there. And in Acts 17:6, it says, these who have turned the world upside down have come here too. You know, I think that's a great testimony for us as followers of Jesus. If people can look at us and go, wow, those are the people that have turned the world upside down, then maybe, just maybe, we're doing what we should be doing if people are talking about us like. And these were the enemies, okay, that were saying this. This was not other Christians saying this about the apostles. These were people who were trying to stop this whole movement. And then we're saying these that have turned the world upside down have come here too. And so, listen, that's our call, guys. That's our call.
It's cool, brother. It's cool. It's cool stuff. You know, when you look at Acts and you look at a verse like that one, you know, this day and age, so many people have gone to like ancestry.com and looking back at their family trees and so forth. But if we look back at our family tree and our ancestry, if it wasn't for the Apostle Paul and others like him, it wouldn't be Christianity. It wouldn't be hospitals. It wouldn't be universities. None of us would be followers of Jesus because it all started back then. They did change the world and turn it upside down. And, you know, part of our calling is to do the same. And,
yeah,
you know, it seems so difficult at times in this day and age and everything that's going on in our country. And it seems like so many things you could look at and it's like, this isn't looking good over here. But as you said, we're blessed in so many ways in the things that we do have. And, you know, things will get better. And, you know, people are like, well, how could I change the world when so many things are so bad, whether it's the economy or the border or this or that or the immigrants or whatever. And you go back to that question, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time. Yep. That's how you change the world. One person at a time, one deed at a time, one thing that you do. It could be smiling at someone or opening a door for someone, helping someone crossing the street, or just taking the time to talk to someone who's lonely.
Absolutely.
That's the first step.
Yep.
That's the first bite out of that elephant.
Absolutely. I love it, Joe.
Yep.
Tammy's got her hand in the air again.
We want to welcome Isaac Badraco. He is the pastor at where Scott and Valerie used to be.
One Life?
The One Life. He's
One Life.
One Life.
All right.
All kinds of pastors.
Awesome. Glad to have you guys on here. Hey, listen, guys. I know all you pastors out there have questions, and that's what this show is about. Joe and I, we have things that we come up with and we talk about But really, the heart of this show are the questions that you have. And so, you pastors out there, I know you have questions. So feel free to bring those questions to us, and we will address those as we see them and discuss those. And we don't have all the answers. We're not here to say, hey, we will answer your questions. We're here to say we will discuss your questions. And conversations are better than lectures anyways, right? I mean, we're not know-it-alls. We don't have it all down pat. We don't have it all under control. We mess up just like everybody else. But I think these questions that people have are worth discussing. And so that's why we do this show. That's why we continue to do this show. This show was birthed out of a need during the pandemic for getting together and praying together.
Mm-hmm.
And because we couldn't meet in the building and all that stuff, we decided to get online. We were wanting to do like a drive-through thing. The city kind of advised against that. And so we made other arrangements and we did this. And I think originally it was like a 2-hour thing.
Mm-hmm.
We shortened it along the way. But then it turned into discussions. People were getting on and not only asking for prayer, but they were asking questions. And so we began to address those questions, and eventually it became known as the ToJo show. And we actually had a little contest, I think, to come up with the name of it. And wasn't it Lois Tubby that came up with the name of the show? So we had several names brought up. So any questions that you have out there are more than welcome. Hey, we are wrapping up our series this week on when anxiety attacks. I just freaked out because my daughter walked in the door. That door doesn't usually open here. Joe says hi.
But show what she does.
Oh, she brought me frozen yogurt. All right.
That's a good daughter. That's a good daughter.
I think she brought it for Tammy. She didn't bring it for me.
That's right, because I've been helping clean. We got family coming, and I've been helping her clean her room. This is my pay. It is well deserved.
So, but guys, we are wrapping up the series this week. We're going to be looking at the haunted heart. And like I said, we're wrapping this up. We're going to be looking at those things that are often hidden in our heart that we carry around, and we put a front, we put a mask on, and we pretend like everything's okay. But we have these things that are down hidden inside our heart that we are really struggling with and dealing with. And we live in a world with people dealing with these things. And sometimes it can cause us to question what's going on in life. Sometimes it can cause us to question our relationships. It can cause us to question our reality. It can sometimes cause us to question God. And so we want to address those things. And that's what we're looking at this week. And we're really going to be honing in on this particular verse, Psalm 55, verse 23. And it says, "But as for me, I trust in you." As for me, I trust in you. And that's what it comes down to, is where are we going to put our trust? Because it doesn't always make sense what's going on around us, and sometimes even what's going on inside of us. It doesn't always make sense. But God's got this. It will happen. God says it's going to happen. It's going to happen. As long as you keep your trust and your faith in Him, heaven awaits you, regardless of what this world may bring to you. Heaven awaits you. You may not get there exactly the way you planned. It may not work out where everything is beautiful and everything was this happy family with a white picket fence around the yard, and everybody lives to be 102, and and you just have these happy moments. Listen, life is tough. It's tough. And even if you do all the right things, it doesn't always work out the right way. But heaven still awaits. Heaven still awaits. So just continue to trust in God. But as for me, I trust in you. That's what it comes down to. Not our circumstances, not our situations. Remember last week, not the boat. The boat may not get us there. That ship may fail. That ship may be destroyed. The job you have, you may lose. The relationship may fall apart. The marriage may fall apart. Somebody that's close to you may die when they are what you would consider too young to die. All of that may fall apart. Continue to trust in God, and you will get to the other side. Joe, you got any closing remarks for
Yeah,
us?
no, brother. It's such an important point to all remember that, allowing God to be your guide begins with a commitment to trust. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6, and I know you know this well, and probably most of our audience does too, but it says, trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. That's the key to it right there, trusting in God. It's easy to trust in God when things are going well and everything is wonderful.
Yeah.
That's not when you got to trust in God. You got to trust in him all the time, especially when you've got challenges, when anxiety is taking hold and it's attacking. That's what this series has been all about. And brother, I can't wait till you wrap it up this week.
I'm looking forward to it. I was reminded of two things while you were talking there. One is, I've heard it said that you don't realize God is all you need until you realize God is all you got. Right?
Isn't that the truth?
And sometimes we get in those situations and we realize God's all I got left here. Everything else is gone. He's all I've got. And then I'm also reminded, anybody that's familiar with Southern gospel music, there's a group by the McCameys, and back in the 80s, they had a song. It was called God on the Mountain. And what the words were is the God in the valley is still God, or the God on the mountain is still God in the valley. And the whole point of the song is, and the reason I thought of that is because you said that it's easy to trust in God when everything's going well. God has blessed me. I've got a good job. I've got a good relationship. I've got a nice car, and everything's just working great. My health is good, and it's just wonderful, man. And God, thank you for this blessing. But then when all that falls apart, then we begin to blame God. God, where are you? What are you doing? Why is this going on? Or we begin to ignore him completely. And listen, he's the same God. The God on the mountain is still God in the valley. And your situation is no different. You may feel like you're alone. You may feel like you're the only one going through it. Listen, we're all going through it. Some of the circumstances may be a little different, but all in all, we're all going through much of the same thing. And that's why I think this series has been such a blessing for people. It's because we're all going through it. We're all going through it. And when we hear this stuff, when we look at things from a spiritual point of view, and we've pointed out throughout this series, we're not anti-therapy. We're not anti-medicine. There's a place for both of those things, and we need those things. Sometimes I do feel like the medicine is abused, that it's maybe we go to it a little too quick. But I definitely don't want to completely do away with it, because there are medicines out there that help during some times when we need it. But oftentimes in the midst of that, we ignore the spiritual aspect of anxiety. And that's what we've tried to do during this series, is not replace those things with the spiritual aspect, but just help us to be able to look at those things as well. Sometimes our anxiety is brought on because we bring on our own storms through disobedience and other things that we do and say that bring those on. And so I'm looking forward to wrapping it up this week. And like I said, if there's some that you've missed, we encourage you to go back and listen to those. Listen, guys, we are out of time. Thank you for being on here. Again, we want your questions. Give us questions, and that's what feeds our show. But we love you, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you for joining us.